Our first big story from the past week, we discussed the recent legal developments involving the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, and the former governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello.
Yes, indeed. In a significant development this week, the EFCC has withdrawn its appeal before the Court of Appeal in Abuja regarding an interim injunction preventing them from arresting former Governor Yahaya Bello. Now, this decision follows a ruling by the Kogi State High Court in favor of Bello, restraining the EFCC from taking another or any action against him pending further legal proceedings.
Now, Bello, who is facing multiple charges, including money laundering and misappropriation of public funds, secured this interim relief through a fundamental human rights suit against the EFCC. Now, the EFCC on Monday then filed a notice of withdrawal to discontinue an appeal against the order of a Kogi High Court restraining it from arresting Yahaya Bello. Now, in the notice, the EFCC claimed the withdrawal was predicated on the fact that events have overtaken the appeal.
Now, further to that, and only yesterday, Friday 26th, a Kogi High Court in Lokoja ordered the chairman of the EFCC himself, Mr. Ola Olukoyede, the man, to appear before it on May 13th to show why he should not be committed for allegedly disobeying its order. Now, joining us to discuss the legal implications of this case and all its rigmarole, we're joined by none other than Olabisi Makonjola, chairman of, or rather, Makonjola, chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association, a Lagos chapter, and partner at Olaniwun Ajayi LP. You're welcome. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Grand.
We were supposed to also have Kingsley Femi Fanwo. He is the Kogi State Commissioner for Information and Communication. Was supposed to join us to make this conversation a lot more robust, but unfortunately he has been unable to. We're unable to get a hold of him the entirety of this morning and yesterday as well. But we're going to get started. So again, thank you so much for coming on and thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Welcome.
Yeah.
First off, I want to ask, how do you see the stage that is being planned before us here? And what outcomes are you expecting? Just cursory view, first off, regarding the courts and, of course, the person of Yahaya Bello himself.
Well, I think the starting point is that a lot of things in the public space is being misrepresented. Matters in court ought not, and I choose my words carefully, matters in court ought not to be discussed, outside of the courtroom. We all should respect the judiciary, respect the court system, and allow the courts to do their case. And I guess that in the course of this conversation, I would explain the true state of facts of this case as between the former governor and the EFCC. Because, I mean, one of the things that we need to do is to enlighten the members of the public so that we don't go about, misrepresenting, what is transparent in courts. And so what you find playing out is a simple case of the law enforcement officer trying to do his job, which it's by law empowered to do. There's a presumption of innocence, and so the ideal thing to do is that where you are called upon to answer a question, you are presumed to be innocent by the law, and you should face your trial and allow the prosecution, as the case may be, to prove your guilt. It's not for you to prove your innocence.
So let's start from the EFCC's withdrawal of their appeal against the interim injunction and its impact. Let's talk about the impact on the ongoing legal proceedings against Yahaya Bello. What were the implications in the first withdrawal and the impact?
Okay, so let me try to set the facts right. The former governor had gone to a Kogi High Court to enforce his fundamental rights. He's by law entitled to do such. The Constitution says that anybody whose rights is being infringed or is about to be infringed can go to the court to seek the protection of that right. And so the former governor was within his rights to go to the Kogi High Court to seek the protection of his fundamental rights. The Kogi High Court rightfully made an order, right, restraining the defendant, as it were, from infringing on the rights of the former governor. That was an interim order. Basically was an order obtained behind the back of the respondent, as the case may be. And from what we've then seen, it turned out that there was a criminal action filed at the Federal Court, Abuja, by the EFCC, where the former governor ought to be facing a 19-count charge of infractions that are criminal in nature. And so the Kogi High Court rightfully made an order, an interim order. But what people don't seem to have averted their minds to is that the Kogi High Court eventually concluded the case and then said that the former governor, should face his prosecution, albeit that a leave of court ought to be obtained for him to face his prosecution. I.e., the Kogi High Court recognized that the EFCC were empowered to investigate financial offenses and that the Kogi governor, the former governor, should just go to the court and face his trial. And so it was on that premise that the EFCC withdrew the appeal because the stage had been set for the prosecution to go on.
It's very interesting that you should actually put this in all its detail. But one thing that I find missing in all the, stories that have been told, whether the media or the rest, is that the dates are not being made clear. When was there an order for arrest given? When was the first initial criminal charge? When was the little details about the dates is what seemed to confuse the matter. And now the EFCC has been, or the boss of the EFCC has been asked to appear before the court May 13th. Now, you've given them like an entire month, it would seem. But what's going to happen in between now and May 13th?
No, so for what I suspect to be the case, the contempt charges that have been filed relate to the period where the order was made. If you remember, the Kogi High Court had made an order, and in that period, there was an attempt by the EFCC to arrest. And my understanding is that the contempt relates to the period when that order was alive. And so that is why the EFCC chair has been called to explain his role, regarding what he did whilst that order was alive. Don't forget I had said that ultimately, the Kogi High Court had said that the former governor could face his trial, albeit that there ought to have been, there should be the permission of the court to
Is this in respect to the siege that was laid on the former governor's house? Was this the time period we're looking at, and was that the action with which the court is referring to?
I'd like to believe,
the contempt
I'd like to believe that, and that's why I said that the contempt relates to the period when the order was alive before the Kogi High Court eventually concluded the case.
Okay.
So yes.
All right. I'm going to take
our guest today is Olabisi Makojola. He is the current chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association Lagos chapter or Lagos branch.
Yes, please, Lagos branch.
Lagos branch. And he joins us here to discuss about the EFCC versus Yahaya Bello and all the issues and all the legal intricacies that's going on. I would like to call it legal clash and battle, but nonetheless. But in the meantime, we'll continue this conversation. But first, our correspondent, who is live at Ondo and with the ongoing primary elections going on in Ondo State, is live right there in Kogi, and he joins us now. Ni Omoni, can you hear me? Ondo State, forgive me. Ni Omoni, can you hear me? Ni, are you there?
We seem to be struggling with that.
We seem to be struggling with his connection.
I'm sure we'll bring him to you as soon as we can establish conversation with him. But back to you, Olabisi. Now, you were telling about the fact that you suspect that it might be the period with which is being referred to here as the period when he perhaps maybe has come in contempt of court. But now that he's been asked to, I know you can't talk much about stuff that are inside of court rulings or so, but what to expect within now and May 13th? What can the EFCC do? And should Yahaya Bello provide himself within that time? Is he subject to getting arrested if he does so?
No, I think the information we have is that in the federal court charge, an order has been made for the former governor to be served through his counsel, and that has been made. So the charge is now to the knowledge of the former governor. Again, I'm being careful not to talk about cases that are pending in court because it's not proper to come on television to talk about matters that are live in court. Yeah. But what I would expect would be for the EFCC to respond to the contempt papers that have been issued and then to explain the position regarding why they did whatever they did. But just to set the record straight, the law the law allows you to, once you are challenging an order of court, and I need not cite authorities, my colleagues, are well aware that once a litigant is challenging an order of court, that litigant can act in defense of that order as long as that order has been challenged. I'd like to think that the reasons why, to the extent that an appeal had been lodged, if you remember, an appeal had been lodged against that order, that was the basis why the EFCC proceeded to do what they did, because the logical conclusion is that if I've appealed against a decision, then I should be allowed to do what I'm doing, just so that in the event that my appeal succeeds, then I would not, have lost out of what I ought to have done.
Well, obviously, you are a lawyer by profession. This entire process, the back and forth between the EFCC and Yahaya's legal team, could there be another route to it? If you look at it from your own standpoint, what would have been a better route to come to a point where the EFCC has him in custody and this would have been a smooth conversation instead of him going on a half marathon?
Nah.
Well, I think that so the case law is to the effect in Nigeria that governmental institutions, particularly agencies such as the police, ought not to be restrained from doing their work. So ideally, courts of law ought not to restrain police, EFCC, and other secret agencies from doing their work. I think that's the starting point. The second point is this, that I'm facing a criminal charge before a court of law does not mean that I'm guilty. The law presumes that you are innocent. And so it is for you as the defendant to attend to your trial and for the prosecution to prove your guilt. It is not for you as the defendant to prove your innocence. And so one would have expected that, the respective parties in this case, knowing fully well what the law is, would allow the court of law determine this case, and possibly for the prosecution, if they have enough evidence to establish the guilt of the defendant, and for us not to have all of these media trials here and there. It's not the best for the justice sector.
The continuous absence of Yahaya Bello, what do you think will be the consequences of his continued absence?
Well, the law allows you to be tried in absentia, provided there's proof of service of the charges on you. We are now aware that there's been service via his lawyers, and so the implication is that the matter ought to now proceed to hearing. Again, I would refrain from commenting about what's happening in the courtroom, but it will be nice for us to follow that space and to understand what the respective parties will do in relation to that litigation. But the course is clear for the matter to proceed, as it were.
Let's talk about what seems to be clashes between the courts, whether it's a state court or the federal court. Why does it seem like there is no channel of communication between the separate courts or judicial systems that are involved? Why is that happening?
No, I don't think that there are clashes. What has happened in this case, it's simple. I'm entitled to go to court to enforce my fundamental rights.
Right.
And that was what the former governor did. He's entitled to do that.
Can you hold on that thought?
Yes, please.
He's entitled to do that. When did he do it? Was there already an order out for him before he went back to the state court to ask for, based on a human rights, what's it called now? That's the question. If he can go to another court and get that order to refrain the EFCC from arresting him, then there seems to be clashes between the different courts involved.
And that was why, and to demonstrate to you that there are no clashes, right, the Kogi court at the end of the day ruled that the former governor could face his trial. So there was no blanket order of court saying that he should not be prosecuted. And don't forget, I had said that there are cases that say that courts of law should not give orders that restrain security institutions from doing their work. So we're aware of such cases. So there's no conflict here. What has happened here was that the former governor went to court to enforce his fundamental rights. The court made an order pending the conclusion of this case. Hold on, right? And at the end of the day, the court then said, well, the case is clear. I don't see what is wrong here. Go ahead and face your trial, which is where we are now.
For the sake of posterity, which court holds superiority?
The Kogi High Court and the Federal High Court are concurrent jurisdiction. There is, they're both on the same par. Appeals from both of them go straight to the Court of Appeals. So one court is not higher in hierarchy than the other.
Okay. Well, Olabisi, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you for doing this with us. This was quite the conversation.